welcome back to the Engler Journey podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Vanderford, and happy summer, everyone. It's summer now. A great year in the Engler program, and today I am here with someone who doesn't mind getting her hands dirty, but really enjoys talking in front of a large group of people, the amazing Abby Miller. So nice to be here with you today.
Thank you for having me, Olivia. It's fun to be back.
Yeah. Could you introduce yourself a little bit, where you're from?
Yep. So I'm from Mead, Nebraska, so just 30 minutes north of Lincoln, and that's where I grew up. I actually lived in town, had a really cool opportunity, though, to actually I have horses, raise some cattle. That's where my really true passion for the agriculture industry was born, and then now I'm here.
Yeah, so roots in agriculture, but being involved in the Engler agribusiness program. So as a graduating senior, could you kind of sum up your experience in the Engler program in a word or a couple sentences, and what it's really meant to you?
Right. The Engler program, the first word I would say to describe it is surprise. So I didn't know anything about this program in high school. It was still, I had no clue. The only way I knew about it actually was through the scholarship program. That was the only way I knew about the school. I knew about entrepreneurship. My grandpa was an entrepreneur. My dad's an entrepreneur. We're a family of entrepreneurs. So I knew this might be a path for me. So I filled out that scholarship. And actually the night before it was due, because I wasn't going to submit it until the night before I changed my mind because I thought it wasn't good enough. Rule number one, always do things unless, even if you don't think it's good enough. And I was lucky enough to be a finalist, so that was my first Engler experience, was the Engler Scholarship Finals. It was hosted at Turbine Flats, which will be important here in a second. And I immediately knew that this was the program for me, even if I wasn't, I was excited about it, but what I found was in that just one day with students in the program, honestly, before I even went through the interviews, in one day I realized I wanted to be more Abby than I could be anyone else. In high school, I struggled a lot with wanting to be like somebody else. And then I got here at a pretty interesting time. I was a freshman in college during the pandemic. So came to school, we were all wearing masks. We had almost no in-person classes other than the good old EAP 101 with Tom. So that was really exciting. So I really think I lucked out, to be honest, because I got a true, Engler was the only option at that time, honestly, for community. So that's kind of where the beginning. Engler as a community since then, that's the word I use to describe Engler. It's a community, and it's a community that offers a multitude of things. The quote of, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, great, because if I could pick out any 5 people, I hope they're all from Engler. Served on a couple leadership teams, so I've been on the very first recruitment team. I was also then on exec team this past year. So that's kind of a summary of what I've gotten to do in Engler, and of course started a few businesses, as I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, perfect. That's a great summary, and it kind of just shows you that, you find yourself when you come to Engler and find this great community. So a little bit of a deeper question I wanted to ask you. Was there any time, throughout your time in Engler, that you wanted to just stop being an entrepreneur, and just some of those, you went through some tough times, tough challenges, and how did you work through that?
I think anyone that says that would tell you that they've never once thought about quitting is a liar. Now, everyone's, the length they think about that, I've totally thought about that. But the second when anyone says that they want to quit, it's because they're really annoyed with what's going on in the moment. The second you think about what the trade-off would be, then it's a pretty easy, not always easy, I shouldn't say easy. It's, if you truly want to be an entrepreneur, I think it's an obvious answer for you, that it is the right place to be, especially being a senior. Right now, it's kind of fun to play around with businesses your freshman through junior year, right? But then you come senior year and you start weighing the salary maybe your entrepreneurial journey is providing you versus a salary of a really flashy sales job with that brand new pickup, 401k, things like that. And it becomes really real. It does. And I think that's okay for entrepreneurs to think about because, we're entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs are humans. And, there's definitely big decisions to make there. So I've absolutely thought about it. In fact, I was just in Haley Demere's office 3 weeks ago, I think, asking her about, is this stupid? She gave me some really good advice about, stick with your heart. It's okay to be poor for another couple of years if you're doing what you really love, because that's priceless. There's so many times where things just didn't go right, where I thought, I can't do, here's one big example. So Pat on Tap, we can get into that. But in Pat on Tap, something that's really important is I have this refurbished 1957 Chevy pickup that I haul around to events. And this pickup is definitely my pride and joy and probably the most expensive thing I've ever owned in my life. And my dad was gone. My dad does a lot of help with me on delivering it, things like that. And he was going to be gone for a trip. No big deal. I can do this. I'm a farm girl. I can load up a trailer, and the day had gone super smooth, right? I get home and I'm so pumped because the day went well. We served 300 root beer floats in like an hour. It was awesome. I was just on top of the world of like, man, this was awesome. Well, I go to unload Pat the pickup from the trailer and I screwed up and the trailer was on a different setting. Essentially there's a lot of different reasons why it happened, but I essentially almost crashed my pride and joy pickup and the pillar of my business. If that pickup goes down, the business goes down. I could not financially recover from that yet. And yeah, it was really bad. And not only did it almost crash, it almost ran into like my neighbor's nice pickup. It really bad. I didn't cry. I cried a little bit, but it was one of those, everything ended up turning out fine. So that was great. I got really lucky. But for that second, it was a big, this is the only piece of this business I don't do alone that I need to be able to do alone. And I screwed it up. How embarrassing. But at the end of the day, it really didn't screw it up. I sat and really thought about it. I knew it was a very small error that I had made. It was easily fixable. It turned out fine. Probably God just telling me a lesson. So I don't do that in front of a client someday. It was on my home street. It wasn't a big deal. Nobody saw it. I checked. So I think that's bad days happen. People want to quit, but when you really weigh what's so special in entrepreneurship of getting to do something you truly love, for most people that are entrepreneurs, that the argument ends there. It's not even an argument anymore because it's not about the money. It can be, but it's not always.
Yeah. So talking about Pat on Tap, how long did that take to make or to build, redo your truck you were talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening that don't know what Pat on Tap is, first of all, look it up. Second of all, so in high school, like I mentioned, entrepreneurship was always something at the forefront of my mind. So in high school, I really knew I loved the events industry. I helped start essentially a nonprofit in high school that brought me into the events industry. Then we got to Engler EAP 101. We had to give a pitch. So that pitch, I incorporated a business that I kind of had in high school that dealt with a cool horse trailer that could be a photo booth, and then I would pick up flowers, essentially. That's the best summary I can give. So it's really where it started. It was Engler EAP 101. I gave a pitch because I knew I wanted to be in the events business. Pitch went great, and I was off trying to figure out first business. Fast forward a couple years, so I knew I still wanted something in the events world that looked really good. I'm a photographer, so I really care about looks. And I came across in San Diego, there's a refurbished old vintage pickup that can serve beer out of the bed of it. I was like, that's so cool. Why have I never seen one in Nebraska? Well, it's because they don't exist. I was the first one. So that was the beginning of 388, about the middle. And one night I was at home, and it was really when I was starting to get pretty serious about thinking about doing it. And I had a mentor. So in 388, you have to have kind of a mentor throughout the class. And she was from my hometown. So she was over, and I asked her, what do you think of this? She loved it. And at this time, an important piece, my parents were not on board. They were like, why would you spend, they see me as smart, you got a full ride to UNL, just go to UNL, get a really good job and be set. Why would you ever throw that away? Why? And it sounds stupid saying it out loud, but once they heard Heidi, my mentor, say, no, this would be a really good idea, then their minds changed. So literally right after that conversation, I said, I think I know where we can get you a pickup. And so long story short, I ended up finding a pickup. I mentioned this in the last podcast. That story's in there if anyone wants to hear it. But so I bought the pickup in September, and then it wasn't done until May of the next year. So it took about a year and a half there, I guess, total, to get completely refurbished, ready to serve beer. In that time, though, I did actually finish another pickup. That one only took 2 months. It's a mini pickup. It's a Cushman. So that goes back to Turbine Flats. So Turbine Flats was where I got my very first taste of Engler. One of the first times I pitched Pat on Tap was at Turbine Flats, actually, at 1 Million Cups. And then Dot, she's my mini pickup, her first event was at Turbine Flats. And a little fun fact about Turbine Flats, that it's now a co-working office space. It used to be a Cushman factory.
Yeah.
That's how that circles back around.
Cool. Also, you have a photography business, right?
Yeah, I do, yep.
Could you talk a little bit about that and what you do with that?
Yeah. So I've been a photographer since I bought my very first camera in 7th grade. And truly that was because I was doing the always looking up to someone thing. My big sister Carol was a photographer. I thought that was awesome, obviously. And I saw she made money on it. You know, I was like, wow, this is great. Yeah. I remember seeing one of her price sheets on our counter one day. And so I bought one in like 7th grade, just kept learning. Truly, high school is about learning. My junior year of high school is probably where I got my first paying client. Started doing seniors, found out I really love seniors. So that's what I focus on is seniors, families, and I also shoot livestock. Obviously, it ties back into my ag roots. I traveled across the country working for a company doing that, and then now I do it myself too. So that's what I do in there. I also do some videography. You'll see my videos at State Fair, Exarban. I do the final drive videos for that. And yeah, I love photography. And it goes back into why I started Pat on Tap, is I truly believe that our lives are just accumulation of memories. Like that's when I'm 80 years old laying on my deathbed, all I'm going to have is, unless I have dementia, which I don't, all I'm going to have is those memories, whether, you know, and so I'm really, really passionate about making sure all those memories that we get to have when we're left, that's all we're left with when we die someday, they're the best possible and that they're captured. So Pat on Tap, they create awesome memories. I've already seen that happen with whether it's a little kid thinking it's the Easter Bunny truck or it's people at a wedding that just, you know, are oohing and awing and laughing around the pickup. Is it really the pickup? No, but it still allows, I think, for the event to be better. The photography side, on the other hand, that is where I can capture those moments of like a little boy giggling with his mom or a senior. I've had so many people tell me that this was like, I can remember this, like this would have been 3 months ago. Someone told me this is after I took it was a headshot. It was really simple. It was just a headshot on a random Thursday because we needed to get it done for work. And she said, this is the first picture I've ever felt pretty in. And I was like, oh my gosh. So those type of pictures are important, but also this is where kind of Pat on Tap, more passion came from. I have as a photographer, very frankly, I have a lot of pictures of dead people. I have a whole bunch of them. And it's sad because people die, but it's also just reminds me of, you know, we only get so many moments and we never know when that moment's the last one. So capturing it, remembering it forever, those are so important. The story kind of intertwined of photos and Pat on Tap is I love making people feel good, creating that moment, but also forever cherishing the moments that I might not have a hand in, but I can cherish that moment for literally ever.
So really, you are impacting multiple lives with both of your businesses, and that's really what's important, impacting people's lives. So someone that has also impacted people's lives is Paul Engler, and he just passed away, I think a couple weeks ago, was it? So you went to the funeral.
I did.
Right? And could you talk about that experience and how Paul impacted your life?
Right. Yeah, obviously, I mean, Paul's the reason this program is here. That's the reason why we get the awesome coffee mugs and kitchen table, right? So I think in general, without his gift, this place wouldn't be what it is today. I think it still could be awesome. Like Engler is not about all the cool, flashy things we get to do and doing on treks. It's truly the community, which doesn't take anything. Engler started at a picnic table outside of the library. Like that's where it started. Truly. So yeah, we did me, Carter, and Taylor, who were all scholarship finalists freshman year. So we all, hopped in Carter's truck and went down to the funeral. And in the funeral, the priest, his homily was awesome, but in it, the main message was, kind of like I mentioned earlier, all you have left to live truly on earth is some sort of legacy. And your legacy for Paul, and for Paul, his legacy was the people. And that was very obvious at his funeral when you had 2 full pews of UNL students that drove or flew over. The closest would have been 10 hours, but as far as Idaho to go make sure that they paid their respects to Paul, and that speaks volumes, right? Like that's just unmatched. Not every donor has the students come back to it. It just proves what this program has done, and he has laid the foundations of the program and found the right people to lead the program to find our next leaders, right? This program wouldn't be what it is without Tom, for sure, even with $20 million. So I think that's where his legacy that I saw. After the funeral, I got a really cool opportunity to talk with his family, and we even got to tour West Texas A&M University, which Paul has also given a large gift to, because that's where Cactus Feeders started, and then got to actually go boots on the ground at his first feedlot. And I learned a few things in there. The first one is mistakes are okay. He had a really funny story with Dr. Pond. I loved hearing all these stories of Paul, so I'll tell one. So Paul and Dr. Pond were, Dr. Pond is the dean of ag, the dean at West Texas A&M University. The story is they needed to take a road trip because Paul didn't like flying. He only liked to drive. And that was the Nebraska kid in him. He liked to drive, and he liked to take his dog with too. So it was Paul, Dr. Pond, and this dog in a car, and they drove on out to Colorado for some meeting. And long story short, Dr. Pond actually crashed Paul's car. It was like he hit a pole or something. It wasn't major, but Paul just laughed about it and said, "Oh, go stand by. We got to go take a picture." And then he kept actually that dent way longer than Dr. Pond wanted to. But what I learned about Paul just through that story was mistakes are okay. Like I love in Engler, we have the quote, fail fast, fail forward. That's exactly what I think Paul kind of emulated through that story of things happen. Like pickups fall off trailers, things happen. It doesn't mean we have to get mad about it. We can move on from that so fast. Like that is a choice. The emotions we feel when failure happens is completely a choice. We can just move on and laugh about the mistake. So I think that's number one. And I'm sure that comes from just years from Paul of messing up a lot more than his BMW, right? So that's the first story I learned about Paul. Secondly, we got to go to Cactus Feeders. And I loved driving into Cactus Feeders. They have a it's like this green arch. It just looks like it came straight from the 1950s. That's what it looks like. So it's not a super flashy, like first thing when you walk in. And I actually love that because it's so humble. And I think that would be a word to describe Paul as humble. You don't need all the flashy things. As an entrepreneur, you don't need the flashy building to start. You just need to start with what you can, where you're at, right? Then we get in, and one of the managers, I think it's like the managers, came and he gave us a tour. And most of the tour was about a feedlot. Being an animal science major, I love getting to learn about feedlots, things like that. But the next thing I learned about what it really means to be an entrepreneur through Paul is the manager talked about how what Paul has made has given him a really financially sound life, and it's through Paul was one of the first to do an ESOP. So basically what it means is as an employee, you are a partial owner of the company. It's essentially like making a company public, but only public to the employees, and that will set the employees up for success. When it's this big of a company, he will retire over a millionaire, I'm sure. But the way he talked about Paul, and he called him Mr. Engler, just showed how much he respected Paul. The fact he didn't even use his first name. Just the fact that Paul did that did not help Paul truly financially. Like that was based out of a true respect for his employees. And I think that's just mutual. Like I see this through Paul and what he's done in the Engler program. So I know it has to trickle from him of when you give to people, they'll give back to you. So in a healthy way, it's not transactional. It's truly healthy. And that's what a community does. You help each other out, and not because you'll get helped later. It's to contribute to the community so that the community thrives, because when a community thrives, people in it thrive.
That is perfect. And he's really someone that we all aspire to be. And so one more question I wanted to ask you about your new venture program or the new venture competition. How did you get involved in that, and what was that like?
Right. So New Venture, I competed my first time my junior year of college. So the New Venture competitions, for those of you who don't know, it's Nebraska's largest business pitch competition here on campus. It really proved to me, like, never count yourself out of something. I did the same thing when I wanted to apply for the Engler scholarship. I didn't think I was good enough for it. So I about counted myself out, and I almost missed out on probably the greatest thing that happened to me through my collegiate career. So I did win. I won some money. So they changed the prizes about every year. So that was awesome. And the money was great. And I'm sure that's what people always ask me about, is like, how do you win? Because I want the money. And anyone that asked me that this year, like, I stopped them right away, because the best thing I got out of that was relationships. Secondly, I got to meet the director for entrepreneurship on city campus, Sam Nelson. If any students are listening to this, understand Engler is a great place. Center for Entrepreneurship is also a great place. Being at UNO, we are lucky to have two great entrepreneurship resources. You go into the competition looking for relationships, connections. Your judges, that's priceless. The judges that they get for New Venture, for example, owner of Huddle, he actually won this. That's why he always comes back, because he was the winner. We pitched business, and then this year got to go back. So last year at New Venture was a really interesting year, because every finalist wasn't a senior. Every finalist was either a sophomore or a junior, meaning we could all compete again. For reference, the year before, I got 4th place. This year, came back, competed against the 2 of the 3 I competed against, and then another winner from 2 years ago. Also it happens to be an Engler business. Competed again, like, I wasn't counting myself out. I was a little more gung-ho on this one, thanks to Brendan Costello. I was ready to go. I felt pretty prepared, but I ended up walking away as the winner. And so the judges had $15,000 that they could do whatever they wanted with it. Everyone could win money. One person could win, but they decided to go all in on me, which was absolutely humbling. Like, I almost didn't even walk up to the stage, because I was like, I can't believe I was paralyzed. Overall, yes, the money is great, absolutely, but it's been the connections.
Yeah, so many great connections from being in the Engler program and graduating now. Right. So that'll be great. And I've just loved talking with you today, Abby, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Olivia.